Coming up, a week after Alex Heinert helped us preview the high school track and field season in the Dakotas, the coaches get their chance to weigh in. Find out which teams they've dubbed as the early season favorites in our inaugural Varsity Sports High School Track and Field Coaches Poll.
Fargo and Sioux Falls squared off on the baseball diamond over the weekend. We'll share some of those highlights from the annual border battle.
All that plus a look back at the South Dakota Coaches Association All-Star Games. Varsity Sports starts right now. And hello and welcome to Varsity Sports alongside Jason Andera. I am Jay Elson.
All right, well, spring sports definitely underway. We're getting outside for some track. Some of the baseball weather is starting to heat up a little bit. It's a fun time to be doing some varsity sports, getting into the thick of the seasons here.
All right, well, let's get right into some track and field highlights this week. And for that, we turn to our resident expert, Alex Heinert.
Hey, thanks, guys. Well, after a few weeks of non-sanctioned indoor meets and a handful of outdoor cancellations due to just plain bad weather, we're just starting to get into the portion of the track season that means something. Yesterday became essentially an opening day for high school outdoor season for a lot of schools, especially in eastern South Dakota. 16 meets took place across the region in what turned out to be a Super Tuesday on the track. Let's start at McEnany Field in Sioux Falls with the O'Gorman Early Bird Invite. A good day for Washington's Haley Christopherson in the sprints. She takes the 100 meters here in an automatic qualifying time of 12.1 seconds. That's the second best mark in AA this season. Other girls' performances were solid, but this meet was really all about the O'Gorman boys. Future USD linebacker Dodi McQuinja would show off his wheels, taking the 100 and the 200 in automatic qualifying times of 10.9 and 22.6 seconds respectively. Andrew Reuter would keep the night winds coming in the 400. Bit of a surprise here. He'd go 51.7 to edge defending AA 400-meter runner-up Isaiah Fettrell of Washington. Fettrell still a little dinged up with a hamstring injury, but a nice win there for Reuter. In the miles, Tegan Lindner would put in another great effort for OG. The AA state cross-country runner-up ran the second-best 1,600-meter time in the state this year at 4:29.8. He'll be one to watch in both the mile and the 800 as well. And then there's Luke Fritsch, who won 3 events on the day, the most impressive coming in the triple jump, an event he was second in state in a year ago. He puts up the best triple mark in the Dakotas this season with a 44 feet 3-inch effort. Off now to Yankton and the YHS Quadrangular, a good showing all day from Lincoln's boys, led by this guy in the middle of your screen, Barayona Ferrula. He runs 11 flat to take the 100 and was a big part of a Patriot team that won every boys relay on the afternoon, the 4x1, all the way through the 4x8 and the medley. We had a good battle in the 800 meters. Brandon Valley's Jacob Hanna and Lincoln's Gabe Peters stayed close throughout. Hanna ends up getting the nod by 0.4 over Peters, and those 2 times you see the best in AA this season so far. On the girls' side, a big welcome back to Krista Bickley, who's been less than 100% since the Dan Lennon a few weeks back. The defending AA champ in the 200 and 400 looked pretty close to full strength Tuesday, going 12.2 to win the 1 and 26.8 with the wind in her face to take the 200 later in the day. Good to see Tanya Tingle back in action as well. In her first outdoor meet of the season, she'd run the second best 400-meter time in AA, 59.9 seconds. And after being injured at the state meet last season, Tingle's return a big reason why Brandon is one of the favorites to capture a state title this time around. Those marks were all good, but Lincoln sophomore Jasmine Cooper came up with something great in the 1600 meters. Despite the windy conditions, the defending AA mile champ would break her own school record with a 5:04.9. That doubles as the best time in South Dakota this season. And for an encore, she'd anchored the Pats relay team to a win in the 4x4 with a sub-60-second split. That's not a bad way to get the outdoor season going. Now, as I said in the highlights, some of the marks you just saw were the best in the Dakotas this year, and that leads us right into our first Platinum Award conversation of this track season. Now, if you recall from last year, we kept track of the best performances of the season in every individual event held in both North and South Dakota and awarded platinum medals at season's end to the winners. In our continued effort to tear down borders, we're doing so again this spring. And although it's early, let's take a look at the first platinum leaderboard of 2016. In boys track events, how about the smaller school athletes proving their worth early this season? Sam Clark of Class A Baltic racked up those leading 100 and 200 meter times at a meet in Chester yesterday, while Bryce Malsom of Edmond Central off to a flying start in defense of his Class B hurdle titles. I should mention, Clark's 100 time was actually 10.28 handheld. That ties a state record, but even with the conversion to fully automatic timing, still better than the platinum winning time of 10.73 from Watertown's Mason Herricks last year. In the boys field, two thoughts on the high jump. First, Jackson Hinch is one of 3 reigning platinum champs on the boys side that returned this year, and he's already bested his 6'8 mark from last year with a 6'9 effort on his home track at last week's Queen City Classic. Second, I know what you're thinking. Didn't we spend like 5 minutes on last week's show talking about Zach Anderson of Parker jumping 6'10 and a quarter? The thing is, Zach's jump happened at a non-sanctioned meet, and even though high jump is pretty much the same indoors or outdoors, these marks have to be set at an Activities Association sanctioned meet, or else there'd be chaos. To the girls' side, where it's dominated by the Western Dakotas, a lot of familiar names here, including a lot of Class A kids in South Dakota. Shayla Howell of Belfouche was almost on this list 4 different times. She's got the best A mark in the 1, the 2, the 4, and the long jump. Also, shout out to Kelby Anderson of Century. Her 5:04.4 just gets the nod over Jasmine Cooper of Lincoln's 5:04.9 in the 1600. Finally, the girls' field, where you can't fail to notice 3 different athletes from Sioux Falls Lincoln in pole position. Izzy Van Veldhuizen, Riley Heyer, and Michaela Moore might not hang on to those top spots all season, but their emergence this spring has the Pats in great shape to contend for a AA title. It's going to be a fun platinum race all season in the Dakotas. We're excited to keep you up to date with it each week here on Varsity Sports, guys.
All right, well, thanks, Alex. Stay tuned, folks. Coming up, we're going to have highlights from the baseball border battle, some all-star hoops, but first, more track, including a first look at Varsity Sports' newest poll.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
And welcome back. Well, those of you who are familiar with our show know that Jason Adair has been putting together weekly power rankings for football, basketball, and baseball for the past few years now. What we didn't have was anything for track and field. Well, that's about to change. Tonight marks the debut of the Varsity Sports High School Track and Field Coaches Poll. Alex Heinert has handled all of the heavy lifting to get this thing off the ground, and he's back with us now. Alex, how did all of this come about?
Well, here at Varsity Sports, right, we're always looking for ways to give you a better feel of the pulse of track and field in the Dakotas while recognizing the best of the best in the sport. And you've heard me talk about who I think the best teams and the athletes are in the region to watch for, but let's be honest, I'm just one man, Jay, and so this spring we've reached out to ask the people who know this sport best, the coaches, to give us their opinion on who the best teams are in their respective states. And this may be, to my understanding, the first ever high school track and field coaches poll in the Dakotas, and we're excited to bring it to you.
Yeah, you do seem excited.
No,
That's a great word.
It was a lot of fun to put it together.
Sure. Well, I mean, I understand this is the first of just 2. It's not going to be a weekly thing like some of the other stuff we've done.
Correct. Yep. This is the April edition. We'll do another one after the Howard Wood Dakota Relays, and me gives our coaches a chance to see a few more teams around the area. The coaches in our state's biggest classes voted on the projected finish of where they think teams will end up at this year's state meets.
Okay, all right, let's go to the results then. First for the A girls in North Dakota.
Yeah, status quo held true in North Dakota, but just barely. 5-time defending champ Century takes the top spot over last year's runner-up Davies by just 1 point in the standings. That was the closest vote in any class in either state. Bismarck High was a close third. Those 3 a tier above the rest in our coaches' minds. On the boys' side, more of the same, with Century on top comfortably over Bismarck High. The defending champ Patriots picked up 80% of the first place votes, with the Demons picking up the rest. A good showing here from Red River and from Legacy as well. Watch out for the Sabres. They've got some really good talent under Chris Clements. While North Dakota showed respect for the defending champs, the South Dakota coaches did not, starting with the AA girls. This was a tight vote as well. Brandon Valley gets the nod, though, over Stevens, with Lincoln and Rapid City Central not far behind. Here's Lynx head coach Troy Sturgeon with his thoughts on that top ranking.
It's kind of an honor. You know, the other coaches think that we definitely have some quality athletes. It's also the bullseye on our back. Last year we kind of flew under the radar, you know, and we kind of like that. But now this year, you know, it just means we have to work that much harder to live up to those expectations.
On the boys' side in South Dakota, it's a tight race at the top, as we expected between Lincoln and Roosevelt. But this was the class with the most divided opinion across our 4 polls. 4 different schools received first-place votes, including 5th-ranked Watertown, while defending champs Roosevelt picked up nearly as many 5th-place votes as first-place votes. Here's what Jim Jarosky had to say about his Pats getting that top spot to start the season.
It's special to be number one anytime and to be thought of that, as a top program, but it's certainly not our goal. Our goal is to be number one at the end of the year, or on the podium at the end of the year. So it's nice to be recognized right now, but our goal is to get better each week. And I know that sounds like a line, but it's true. We're just trying to get better each week and be great at the end and have a good performance at the state meet. So,
yes, love me some coach speak. Well, as you mentioned, Alex, we are going to be revisiting the poll coming up in early May. In the meantime, let's get your thoughts on this and some other things as we go to another edition of the Acceleration Zone. What is our mark for this week?
Well, one of the longest standing all-time girls records in South Dakota goes back to 1978. Hall of Famer Kay Stormler of Watertown put up a 2:07.9. Macy Hines now came within striking distance of that last season at the Howard Mid-Dakota Relays with a 2:11. It'll take something really special, though, to knock Kay off the record books.
Great time indeed. All right, the gun is up, and we are off. Give us your initial thoughts on what we just saw with that first poll.
Other than feeling vindicated as the coaches agreed with me on 3 of the 4 preseason choices, I think the results show the coaches feel we've got a 2 or 3 team race in each of those top classes. Sure. There are definitely tiers at the top, whether it's Brandon, Stevens, Lincoln, and then everybody else in Girls AA, or Century, Bismarck, and then everybody else in Class A boys. It's not a huge surprise. It's usually like that in the top classes in the state, but it's interesting to see that divide in the actual numbers.
North Dakota's outdoor season has been slowed by some poor weather. I know that's not a shock, but who's standing out in limited action?
Well, not too surprisingly, the big names are coming to the forefront. Hunter Johnson of Bismarck ran 11:08 at the Carl Guard Invite last Friday for the best 100 time in North Dakota this spring. He'll be in the platinum mix again in the 1 and the 2 before all's said and done. In that same meet, the relay battle between Bismarck High and Century on the boys' side, really fun to watch. The Pats took the 4x2, the Demons took the 4x1. Expect that back and forth to continue throughout the season. Elsewhere, keep tabs on Blythe Mantrout of Bismarck. She was outstanding 2 years ago as an 8th grader. She's got the top high jump and long jump in Class A so far this season.
Okay, good to know. Where you headed this week?
Now, I'll be in the Black Hills on Saturday for Rapid City's Track-O-Rama. It's a great blend of West River powers in AA and A, plus Pierre, Roosevelt, a pretty good contingent from Brandon Valley's going out there as well. I've been wanting to get out there for the last couple of seasons, and I'm excited that this is going to work out this year.
Well, I'm sure they're going to be excited that you're going to be there as well. So thanks, Alex. Now, stay tuned. The border battle featured some great baseball teams from Sioux Falls and Fargo. We're going to look back at how some of those interstate matchups played out when we come back.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
And welcome back. Well, for the past few years, baseball teams from the Fargo area have squared off with their Sioux Falls counterparts in an early season series appropriately referred to as the Border Battle. This year, the games were split between Harmon Park and Ronkin Field on the campus of Augustana University here in Sioux Falls. Lincoln was the only team to complete a perfect weekend. Jason, the Patriots won all 3 of their matchups, giving up 11 runs in the 3 games. They were particularly strong in the wins over West Fargo and Fargo South, where they yielded a total of 4 hits. Caden Veland and Nolan Burchell started those 2 games for the Patriots.
All right, West Fargo did well, winning 2 of their 3 games in Sioux Falls. They got a strong pitching performance from Morgan Capoon against Roosevelt, and then they scored 8 runs against O'Gorman for their 2nd win of the weekend. Good start for the Packers.
Absolutely. Despite the cool temperatures, the O'Gorman Bats didn't have any trouble warming up over the weekend. The Knights put up 24 runs on the weekend. Andrew White knocked in 4 of those, while Jack Baker racked up 6 hits to lead that offensive explosion.
By the way, they added 12 more runs against Washington on Tuesday, so the Bats at O'Gorman doing their jobs. All right, Roosevelt, they took 2 of the 3 on the weekend as well. Jack Simonson hit safely in all 3 games. He got 5 hits in the border battle games. Riders got their best performance in that battle on Saturday with a 9 strikeout performance from Gus Ruddell.
All right, let's take a look now at how the whole thing shaped out. As we mentioned, Lincoln 3-0, West Fargo, O'Gorman, Roosevelt all went 2-1. Fargo South Shanley and Sioux Falls, Washington went 1-2. Fargo North, the only team to not get a win in this year's event.
Yeah, and Fargo North played a couple really close games, so don't look for them to just go off the page. Fargo South, another quality team. Last year, we really saw dominance from the Sioux Falls teams. This year, much closer, although the wins did still favor the Sioux Falls teams.
Well, if you weren't able to get to the ballpark last weekend, we do have you covered. We're going to air some tape-delayed broadcasts of some of those border battle matchups in the coming weeks. Be sure to check our program schedule at midcosn.com for the air times. All right, Jandy, let's touch on your power rankings now. Any big changes in Class A in either North or South Dakota?
Well, the biggest change, I think, was Mitchell. I watched them play on Tuesday against Roosevelt. Had a nice late inning comeback to beat Roosevelt, and now they're 7-1 on the season, so I bumped them up to number 3. I still think Lincoln and Pierre, the two teams to beat there. Class B, still pretty wide open. St. Thomas More did lose one game on the road against Harrisburg, but that's playing a class above. Del Rapids also with a loss, but they played a class above, losing to Lincoln. I think the rest of this field is pretty good. Winter Cologne making their first appearance in that top 5 in South Dakota. Now, when we move over to North Dakota, a lot more games have been played, actually, which is not always the case.
Yeah, exactly.
Great weather in North Dakota this year, but Century is still at number 1. Yes, they do have a couple losses on the early season, lost to Dickinson, but I still feel like that's the best team, the team to beat. Grand Forks Red River, for me, still the best team out of the East. Lost one game to West Fargo, so you could make a case for West Fargo, but Red River, West Fargo, the class of the East, and then Bismarck putting up some really good games. I think that's going to be a team to watch as we go. 4-2 on the year, did split with Century, so I think these 4 teams you could pretty much mix up, and right now this is how I have them shaking out.
Interesting that the weather has cooperated enough for baseball teams to get some games in, but as we heard from Alex Heiner just a little earlier up in North Dakota, not so much for the track teams. They're struggling to get some of their meets here in early April.
Weather's always the wild card in spring sports, and we still could be in for a couple of rough weeks, but right now we'll take the good weather.
And it is good weather, and that's a good sign. Well, we did get one more chance to watch some high school hoops over the weekend in Sioux Falls. The best players in South Dakota showcased at the Sanford Pentagon. We've got the highlights coming up next.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
The best basketball players from the state of South Dakota all converged on Sioux Falls last weekend for the annual Coaches Association All-Star Games.
Yeah, and they did a great job of getting the best players to come to this game. It was a true who's who of high school basketball. The teams weren't split up by geography or by class, a random split to make 2 very highly competitive teams.
And that's always a little bit more fun when it feels like the teams are a little bit more even. And all of this, by the way, coming together at the Sanford Pentagon, who did a great job hosting the event once again. Let's take a look now at some of the highlights. The ladies got together for game 1. Allie Kucha of Wagner hit some big shots early on. She finished with 17 points on the day. She finished 5 for 11 from beyond the arc. Kennedy Cheeseman of Hanson led the blue team with 18 points, while Sarah Carr of Huron and Anna Goodhope of Sioux Falls, Washington both put in 17 points. Michaela Stofferhan of Del Rapids and Sarah Carr both grabbed double-digit rebounds for the blue team. But the star of the stars on this day, certainly future South Dakota Kyle, Kira Duffy from St. Thomas More. She led all scorers and rebounders with 27 points, 12 boards, and the white team goes on to get the win 95-89. Kira talked with our Carla Metz after the game.
You get to play with some of the best players in the state. What's it like to be recognized with this group?
Oh my gosh, I mean, this is just, these girls are incredible basketball players, but they're also incredible people. So to be able to come in here and get to know them and play with them, it's just a really big honor.
In the boys' game, it was a high-scoring, high-flying affair as expected. The white team got a great performance from Aaron Severin. He led his team in rebounds, assists, and was second in points with 16. Ty Hoagland, the Gatorade Player of the Year, led the white team, though, with 18 points. The blue team's Colin Kramer of Sioux Valley had a couple of very nice dunks on his way to 11 points and 5 boards. And the blue team had 8 of their 10 players into double digits, 16 from Nate Davis, a double-double from Tristan Techmeyer.
It's been crazy playing with these guys throughout my whole life, and then finally having one final game, just kind of go out in your high school career, and it was real fun. I know making a lot of jokes out on the court, and we try to make it fun and also competitive at the same time. And I couldn't be more thankful for the experience. Just a great way to go out.
Certainly a fun day at the Pentagon, seeing some of the best that our state has to offer, no doubt, and the level of basketball certainly high.
Yeah, the level was extremely high, and a lot of serious game out there, too. I know it was for fun, but people wanted to show off what they could do. Sure. And by the way, we had that game live on Midco Sports Network. You can either order a DVD through our website, or you can look for upcoming times that'll be replayed.
Just go to the programming schedule at midcosn.com for those re-air times. Well, plenty of events are going to highlight the spring sports schedule over the next week. We're going to wrap things up tonight with a look at the 7-day outlook right after this.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
And welcome back to Varsity Sports. Things are getting much more seasonable outside, at least today anyway. Of course, that could change in a hurry, but that does make it, at least for the short term, a whole lot easier to get outside and enjoy the spring sports season. If that's your thing, then you've got some good options coming up on the calendar here over the next week. Jason, let's take a quick look now at our 7-day outlook.
Yeah, the 7-day outlook looks fun. A lot of stuff going on in Rapid City, including a couple big baseball games. You see Roosevelt taking on Stevens, Lincoln taking on Rapid City Central, and they're going to play a couple games out there in Rapid City this weekend. But you've also got Track-A-Rama at the exact same time. Now, the big thing on here, you see the percent chances to win on the bottom, but you see the percent chance to rain. 60% chance. They say they're going to run the Track-A-Rama no matter what. So look for some good track there, even if there's a little rain getting in the way. That happens in the hills a lot. Yeah. But in North Dakota, we've also got some great games. West Fargo and Shanley. Shanley started out the year in the rankings. West Fargo's moved into the rankings, so we'll see where those two teams stand. And then toward the end of the week, a Class B game, Madison taking on Del Rapids, two good teams in Class B. And I'm look forward to Brookings taking on Aberdeen, two one-loss teams in Class A baseball as well.
All right, well, that is going to be our time for this week. For Jason Andera, Alex Heinert, I am JL, so we're going to see you back here next week for another edition of Varsity Sports.